what advice would you give to the people who have just started meditating and, are just starting this spiritual awakening that they're experiencing?
I'm reminded of what I see in many of my clients is they're so afraid of the pain. And so they run away from the pain. Don't be afraid. Because the truth is, we've already experienced the pain. And what they don't know is that that pain can leave them forever if you face the pain. Part of this is trusting yourself to want something better. And the pain usually is the driving force, because if you recognize how deep in pain you really are, and that the pain is driving all this bad behavior and all this negative circumstance around you, then most people are willing to at least look at that pain and see what they can do to transform it.
Welcome, everybody, to the Empowered Self podcast. This is officially episode 2. So the first one was really incredible. My mom got to interview me, and we had this great conversation about sort of my journey and how to empower yourself now to be more authentic. And so now it's a real treat for me to actually get to be in the position of sort of interviewing and get to allow your light and your wisdom, your incredible gifts to shine through and be seen by the world. Because for those of you who don't know my mom, she is just one of the most incredible people ever for so many different reasons. And I know I'm biased, but I think a lot of people would agree with this. She's been helping people for her entire life, and she's one of the most selfless people I've ever met. So she has a really great gift of getting to the root problem that people are facing and helping them to see whatever that is, and then giving them the pieces of advice and the information they need to work through whatever that is. So this was very relevant for me the other day because I was actually having some of my own personal issues, and we sat down for like an hour and a half, totally unexpectedly, but she just gave all of her time to me to help me work through this deep issue that I was going through. And I felt a million times better after. And this is not the first time this has happened. This has happened many times over the course of our relationship. So really with that, I just want to say, like, how did you get into this journey of helping people, and what is it about helping people that makes you so motivated and so passionate to continue to do it in a sort of a real way of service, just service and devotion?
I think I was on a journey that was not really chosen for me, in all honesty. At the time I made a decision to look for something different, I was in a place of despair myself. I was very depressed. I could not really find any joy in my life, although I had 2 small babies. You had just been born about a year prior to this. And I just had a discontentment, a sense of yearning for something, and I wasn't quite sure what that was. So I decided to take a meditation course, and through that journey, I had this awakening of an experience that I had that was really profound. I was really curious about that, and in that discovery, I really woke up to realizing that there's stuff going on in my life that I maybe have to look further into. So I went to Toronto and I took a meditation course, and the first day I had an incredible vision. I wasn't expecting that. That kind of drew me in. And for the next 3 years, I went and explored myself through this program of self-discovery. And I was so resistant to it because my patterns have really gotten me to a place of feeling unworthy and not enough. And that certainly showed up in this program. It was only my commitment to graduating that really led me to work with individuals. And oh my gosh, that first experience was terrifying for me because all the issues about feeling unworthy certainly came up. And I should step back. This program was a psychotherapy program, if you will. So it was integrating both energy modalities as well as self-awareness, things like addictions and patterns and behaviors and all that stuff. So as I'm working towards becoming a therapist, never intending to ever be a therapist beyond that program, I was just really there to explore my own self. So part of the curriculum was to go out and work with individuals. And so I had to pull my stuff together and ventured into that first session, totally terrified, totally in my mind. I have no idea what I said or what that session was all about. But again, that was a decision I made to continue through the fear so that I could graduate. Now, again, I was never planning to be a psychotherapist beyond that point, but through that process of working with individuals, I really realized that if I was really in tune with that person, I could feel what they were feeling. I could resonate with some of the pain they had, and certainly because I've experienced a lot of that pain. And then when I could really see them getting some comfort and support in that, in a way that I had never experienced in my life before, that became the reason I wanted to serve. I want to help people realize that there is a different experience in this life. And if we can get beyond all the boundaries and limitations and programmings that we had before, we actually open the door to that essence of our true self, where that happiness and joy lies. And I've seen it happen to every single client I've worked with. So the possibility is huge. And so why I'm still doing what I'm doing is because I see the power within us, and I recognize the power within people, and I remind them of that, and I help support them and guide them on their journey. So it's such a reward for me. And I have to say I'm a little selfish in this too, because I get so much joy when I see people feeling better about themselves and their lives and feeling empowered to make new choices. But it also is a constant reminder for me to stay in check with me. So part of the journey in artful partnership that I have with my clients is that at some point in that journey, I recognize I've either been here, and so, I'm even more encouraged to support them because I know that they can make that significant change or transformation. But at the same time, there are times that as I'm speaking a truth or a wisdom to somebody, I'm reminded myself that maybe I need some work on this, right? And so it's a beautiful kind of dance that happens between me and the individual because both of us are growing and learning in that experience. And also, I love that intimate connection. I mean, I'm so honored and grateful, but it's very humbling to sit with an individual and be in their pain with them and be in their joy with them and have that intimacy that we generally don't get in our regular day-to-day lives. So it's absolutely something I'm passionate about. My heart and soul is in it. And in fact, the reason I'm doing this podcast is to be available for more people, to help more people, because I have recognized that I've been selfish in many ways because of my own resistance. I've not ever been seen or heard in the ways that I needed to as a child. And I've been working on that for the last 40 years because I'm in my 60s now, kind of started a little bit of the journey in the 20s, but this particular journey of self-growth and self-evolution started just after you were born. So I was about 36, 37 when I really started seeking a new way of being and a new way of living.
Wow, amazing. And so you said that, you entered into this psychotherapy program and you had this sort of deep meditation experience, which really sort of, let's say, illuminated things for you, that there was more than the perception you were currently in. How did you even end up in a psychotherapy program? Like, what was the draw to want to do that?
Oh, again, must have been guided from something greater than myself or my higher self, because again, coming from a place of lots of woundedness, which I didn't even recognize at the time, I was only looking at the symptom of the depression, but I didn't recognize the woundedness there. And I started in the program with meditation and wanting to learn more about sort of the metaphysical parts of it, so the energy parts. I was interested in Reiki and some other modalities that are similar to that. But here again, my unworthiness came in because in these classes, I'd start to compare with other people who could feel energy and could, people would maybe go through a Reiki treatment with this individual I'm thinking of particularly, and they would be astonished and changed after they got at the table. And that certainly wasn't happening for me. And yet I wasn't giving myself enough credit because looking back, I'm an empath naturally, so I'm a feeler. But it was in the resistance of unworthiness that I was comparing myself, and in that comparison, I was coming out, at the bottom. But the truth was, I was having lots of experiences beyond this physical experience. I could tap into people's emotions. I could feel what they were going. I could kind of guide them, but I wasn't really acknowledging that within myself. So from that comparison is when I thought, oh, I'm not an energy healer. So let me go into something I do know, which is the mind. So psychology is kind of mind-based, right? And so that was a natural track for me. And the course itself was a fascinating journey of just human understanding. And so that in itself just kind of grabbed me, if you will. And so every time I'd go in, I'd learn another piece and I'd go, wow, this is just astonishing how this all kind of works. It's kind of like this map that I was creating. So it was really from resistance. And as I said earlier, that resistance has always been in my life. And so one of the things I've been learning over and over and over again is to step over that resistance. Because what I've found is beyond that resistance comes the magic in my life, right? So that resistance was beautiful for me to experience because it got me to this place today. So as a psychotherapist, that felt a little bit more natural, but I certainly didn't think I was worthy enough to go and support other people, right? So the other thing about the psychotherapy that was a little challenging was as I was changing, so was my relationship at home. Now, my relationship with my ex was not ideal. It wasn't, it was a healthy enough relationship, but there was no emotional connection. And so that started causing some further problems in the relationship. And then I was struggling here with both continuing the program because I wasn't getting the support at home, but then feeling this need within myself to keep learning and growing. And I knew that I was really getting into some deep places, and I was changing, not necessarily for the better all the time, because there was a lot of emotions that came up that I had to deal with. But there was just a natural pull there, and I would listen to it. So I would say I was guided to it, and because I continued to listen to it and trusting this path that was so unknown, that I was so afraid of, really, kind of created a bond here that exists even today, but a healthier bond, a very different bond.
Mm. So I know something that you've struggled with is using your voice. And I know you've said that this came from the past, right? Like a lot of your upbringing and suppressing, basically people suppressing you so you don't feel free to say what you want to say and how you want to say it. But now here you are speaking your truth on a podcast publicly. So how did you get from this place where, you weren't able to express yourself freely, and now you're in a much healthier relationship to your voice and to that part of yourself? And I know you talked about having a tumor on your spinal cord, right? Which is sort of directly connected to the voice in a lot of ways, right? That's where our vocal expression comes from, is that area. So do you want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah. So the tumor actually is right here, but we took it from the back. So it was right on my vocal cord. And the moment I found out that I had the tumor, once the shock was over, I took full responsibility for it. I know this is going to sound strange for some people, but I recognized that in my relationship of 20 years with my ex, that in those 20 years, I completely shut down my voice, my truth. And I totally blocked it. And after all those years, not just in the marriage, but prior to that, right, when I was 5, I had a situation or an incident with the neighbor kids who were older. And I went to my mom, and there was some cruelty that they were speaking of and acting out. And I'm very bothered by lots of negativity and violence. And so even at an early age, I felt that. And I went to my mother to speak to it. And she said very clearly, "Who the hell do you think you are? And who would listen to you anyways?" Oh, wow. You add that on top of my Catholic background, which, really basically tells you to be quiet and be quiet and be nice. And then, adults have superior authority, so they don't listen to children. And so I was always rewarded for staying silent. So with that pattern in mind, when the tumor came up, at that moment, I actually realized the power within us and how much these things really do affect us. And I had totally shut down my whole voice. So when the tumor was removed, after the healing, I think unconsciously, now that I'm remembering that, I think that was one of the greatest lessons for me to learn, was if I do shut myself down, it'll get to the point where I will have no voice. And there is this voice inside of me that was yearning to come out and to be a part of the world and be fully myself. And so I have worked very hard to be here. And I can't say this is easy at all. But I'm now recognizing that it is my choice. And in the choice, I'm very empowered to do that. And now that I can help others, right, as I've helped myself, that in itself is such a gift. So I have no regrets that this happened, right? It was a very powerful thing for me to take something that was so devastating and really prevented me from living a full, authentic life, to now fully receiving that and welcoming it in even more.
Wow, it's pretty incredible. Thank you for sharing. You're a great guest to have on, because a lot of these things are going to empower people, I think. I think the accountability point is huge, where it's like, we do have issues in our lives, and it can be helpful to address them and accept that they're happening and take that responsibility, saying that this doesn't happen to everybody. Why is this happening to me? As Carl Jung talks about, it's like the physiological symptoms that we experience are often due to psychological issues that we're having that manifest through our body. So that basically it gets so bad that they have to be addressed and they have to be dealt with. So I guess that's huge.
I see that in my work all the time, and it's something we're not necessarily aware of it, but the truth is in our bodies. And when we don't deal with our emotions and we think we're solving it by shutting it down or sticking them in the corner somewhere, right? It's not the truth. The truth is it sits in our body and it waits for us, because it's really our feelings and our emotions are there as part of our experience to guide us, and we're best to listen to it. And in the listening is where we have the ability to know what the truth is and how to navigate through that. But when we're so afraid of things, and part of shutting your voice is shutting everything down, your emotions as well, right? Like, I certainly wouldn't feel safe enough to express all my emotions if I can't even speak my truth sometimes. So those emotions definitely get locked into the body. But it's an amazing journey, because once we find where those emotions are and we actually listen to it, and then we have the ability to navigate to a new course, if you will, and we do navigate to a different course, what happens is those emotions disappear. They actually then settle down and they go back to being normal emotions, and then our body gets released of that. So we have more freedom in our body to not only express ourselves, but the pain disappears, the inflammation, there's so much that the body just holds on to continuously that it almost becomes like a volcano exploding at some point, right? So by going inward and really addressing some of these issues, we give the chance for the body to actually release. Therefore, we can release the stress and just the functionality of the body, and it starts to work in synergy with the rest of us again.
Beautiful. Yeah. Now I think I know where a lot of my ability to listen to my feelings comes from, is that I think you instilled this in me from a very early age. So I want to thank you for that, because it has been so useful. And my feelings have been a huge guiding force in my life, leading me to the life that I want to live. And I'm incredibly happy with my life because of the direction that my feelings have pulled me in. So, but I also want to ask you as well, because I know you have a big story about an anger retreat that you went to, and how that anger retreat really helped you have a breakthrough. So do you want to share that story?
I went to a weekend to which the weekend was intended to help us with anger. So I went to this because it was necessary for part of my program, not because I was experiencing anger, nor was I even thinking I had an anger issue. And again, everything was inside now, right? So did the workshop the first day, did all the help with the facilitation and helped with other people's healings. And when it came to me, it was like, oh, this is a breeze, right? Like, so the first part of it was to draw a picture, right, of anything. And so I drew a picture of my family dynamic. And I noticed in the picture that I was very separated from the family, right? And there was sort of some expression of anger on the page, lots of red I was using, and, all kinds of things that identified as anger. But again, I'm not really feeling it. So the therapist started talking to me about my journey and the story and everything, and he wasn't really getting anywhere. So then he suggested I go against the wall, which I thought was kind of odd. So up against the wall I went, and then he came in front of me and he put a pillow in front of me. I didn't like that, but didn't say anything. So now he starts to put his pressure on the pillow, which is putting pressure on me, and I'm up against the wall doing this, and then going, and again, no voice, but feeling that resistance was still no change. So we pushed a little harder. Then he brought in another one and another person. So 3 people are sitting on a pillow up against, pushing me against the wall. It felt like a good minute or two. And I'm really kind of, now I'm not choking, but feeling it and feeling and then that's when it happened. So that's when I just yelled and screamed, and I kind of pushed my body out, and the pillows fell forward and off they went. And then it all came out, right? And this particular dynamic was beautiful because I had other people playing, my mother and my father and other key players in my life. And so I was able to sort of address some of this energy that I'd been storing for so long. And I was astonished how much I'd been carrying. And it was really heavy. And it was the first time I actually had a voice to it. But I can tell you, afterwards, although I felt a great release, that day, it was wonderful. I felt freedom for almost the first time. I felt elevated. After this, I went to a toy store. I decided to buy my inner child. I always loved rag dolls. Went bought a rag doll, right, and hugged it all night. But then the next day, I got tremendous shame and guilt about, wow, first of all, holding all that anger and not allowing myself permission to express it, but also just even having the anger. Because when you stop feeling, you feel like that's your safety net. Anything else beyond that feels really chaotic and crazy. So that took quite a long time to kind of adapt through that. And so what I started to do was I started journaling. I found journaling very powerful for me in terms of expressing my truth. And so I always struggled at the beginning with journaling because the first little bit is, my mind trying to go, well, you have to make it perfect and the sentences all have to look good and you want to tell the narrative and the story, right? But once I kind of get past that, what happens is I put it on the table and it's the first time I can see it and feel it. And I get very emotional through the process because it's kind of like, it's all coming out. And then after the emotions go through, then I get that sense of peace. And in fact, that's why I started this whole journey of seeking something different for myself, because I wanted to have a sense of peace in my life. And I can absolutely say I have it now. And I even experienced it from the point of wanting peace through meditation. Some of that first beginnings in meditation helped me find a little bit of peace. And a little bit of peace was all I needed, because peace is such a wonderful place. Right? And I can get into to that a little bit more if you'd like. But so journaling was really helpful. Then I'm a physical person as well. So having opportunity to be physical with my anger. I can remember one time coming home in the car, and I had just had a session in school where it had opened me up to some more emotions, primarily about shame. Like, anger, I find, for me, comes first, and then after the explosion, then underneath is really where the pain is. And then it carries in through shame and guilt. So if I can get to those areas, then I know I'm getting to the key of things. So here I've got an experience as I'm driving, and if anybody saw me, my God, they would have thought I was crazy. But in that moment, I felt like I needed to express my anger. And so I screamed in the car, and I screamed so loud that I was astonished by the energy that came back to me, because I was in a contained space. I'd never experienced my anger back at me. So that was a very powerful thing to recognize. Wow, first of all, I have this force inside me that needs to be expressed, but also that energy that I carry. Well, if I could transform that energy into something positive, wouldn't that be incredible, right? And in that regard, I would almost say it was anger matched with rage, because rage is a whole different thing. It's when you go chaotic and crazy, and it doesn't make any sense, and it's just a release. So there's a combination of that. By physically expressing my feelings too, that's really helpful. I'm finding now I'm doing things like ecstatic dancing and singing and playing with art and colors a little bit more to express some of that. So what I really found is there are many ways that we can express ourselves in a really healthy way. And sometimes it's healthy to do it on our own, by ourselves, so that after we've let go of those negative emotions and we have a settling down almost to a sense of peace, then you get the clarity of what's really going on. And then you have the doors open to a new way of kind of dealing with that, right? I think I want to leave it there because nothing's really...
Yeah, totally. And so I think that's just a really incredible example of why these sort of tools are being used in our society more and more. And you see these videos of people shaking and screaming, and the average interpretation when you first see that is like, these people are being crazy. Like, this is silly, this is ludicrous. But when you get deeper into the mechanics or the mechanisms that are at play under the surface of why they're actually doing it, then it really does make a lot of sense. And it can really help people to feel better after. So thank you for sharing a real story of how these physical releases can actually help us to express the suppressed emotions that we're feeling. And when we do that, it's able to enable us to feel a lot better. So, but the next place I want to take this is, you have very clearly done so much inner work, and that shows, because you've never gotten angry at me. Like, you've never done any sort of abusive behavior to me whatsoever. You've done such a good job at regulating your emotions, even with me being the problematic kid that I was for many years. And so I think it's because very clear how much inner work you've actually done, and how much of your life you've dedicated to consistently working on the things that you're dealing with, even though a lot of the times these things are incredibly difficult, and so many others would turn away when you turn into the pain and turn into that egg. So what I want to ask you now is, like, given all the experience that you have in this field and in this community, what advice would you give to young women who are just starting to sort of find themselves and explore themselves and find their voice and learn how to authentically express who they are deep inside? From your experience perspective as sort of an elder in this field who's been doing this for as many years as you have, a very respected title, what advice would you give to the people who have just started meditating and, are just starting this spiritual awakening that they're experiencing?
I'm reminded of what I see in many of my clients is they're so afraid of the pain. And so they run away from the pain, right? And it doesn't run away with you, it runs with you. And what I would say is, don't be afraid. Because the truth is, we've already experienced the pain. But in experiencing that pain, we were generally younger and not in a place of really recognizing what was going on, or not having the ability to be empowered to work through it healthily. And so I remind people that you've already experienced this pain, but now we're looking at it with a new perspective. As whatever age you are, at that point in time, you have now life experience, you have new knowledge, you've seen yourself and witnessing yourself out in the world and what you're capable of and what you're not. And those things we have to remind ourselves of that we are quite capable as adults, even if we're a young adult, to make really good decisions sometimes, right? But we don't make those good decisions if the pain is showing up in ways that we don't even recognize, right? So there's a part of us that holds on to that pain that generally gets triggered, and then we see this weird behavior that comes out of us, and we question it, wonder why it's there, and we judge ourselves for it, and then we stuck it back down. Well, when you feel more empowered, you recognize that it's a big step towards believing in yourself, really. So believing in yourself that you can go and face the pain again, but recognizing you're a different person now, right? And with working with somebody or, finding other ways through books or podcasts or other ways of learning, you recognize that, okay, you do have way more ability to look at the pain. And what they don't know is that pain can leave them forever if you face the pain. And so when you give people that choice, when you really help them recognize the pain that's in their life and what it's doing to them and how it's preventing them from living their true life, most people are willing to take that risk with me, right? And it doesn't have to be with me or with a therapist, but what I'm saying is part of this is trusting yourself to want something better. And the pain usually is the driving force, because if you recognize how deep in pain you really are, and that the pain is driving all this bad behavior and all this negative circumstance around you, then most people are willing to at least look at that pain and see what they can do to transform it. So one of the things I would say to younger people too is get off social media as much as you can if you're listening to garbage, right? If you're listening to things that are filling your heart up and filling your mind and making you a better person, fantastic. But if you are listening and scrolling through other people's interpretation of life and other people's ideas of life and their falsities and how they create their life too, because so much of that is not real, and you're judging yourself against that, and that's going to cause you a lot of pain right there, stop it. Stop the negative influences in your life. Walk away from those people that are not positive. Walk away from the situations that are not helpful. But only you can make that decision. But you have to decide whether you want to be a better person, a healthier person, a more fulfilled, loving person, or whether you want the same old crap. Because I'll tell you, if you don't get rid of the pain, it doesn't get any better. Because even if you think the pain is projected through a relationship and you leave a relationship, for instance, if you don't fix that pain, you're going to move into another relationship that's actually going to be worse for you in the long run, right? Because you're not learning and growing into a better you. So some of this is not your fault. In fact, a lot of this is not your fault. And so if you recognize that, and then you recognize that there are other ways, you just maybe aren't familiar with them, then become familiar. Look for positive mentorship. Look for people you admire. Look for somebody that has a life that you would love to have, and start kind of modeling them, if you will, right? As opposed to comparing yourself to all these other illusions that are created for us. I was in the cosmetic business for a long time, so I know about illusions very well. Most of those magazine covers, for instance, you pull all that makeup away, all the lights, all that, they look just like us. They got the brown marks, they got the wrinkle. Well, maybe not at 20. Again, my perspective is a different time now. But we don't recognize how much influence we have and how much power we put into other people's opinions of us, right? And part of this whole journey is really to bring that back to ourselves, to become more empowered within our own truth.
Wow, that was very deep. The Mama Bear claws came out for that one, giving some stern lessons to coming through. So yeah, I just want to take a collective deep breath. So if everybody's at home, we can just breathe that in. Let it go. So something that is super cool about my mom as well is she has this incredible ability to tap deep into a very meditative state. And from this state, it can really allow her to shut down her egoic thoughts and allow some of the wisdom of her body and of the sort of collective mind to come through. So what we're going to do now is get her to tap into this meditative state. And we're just going to see if any messages come through for the listeners at home. So yeah, are you tapped in? You ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go.
So the main question I have is, guess what is the message that our audience needs to hear today? What is the piece of wisdom that they could use on their journey at this time?
They do want to express that they are aware that there is a lot of challenges for us, and the challenges are going to be coming in fairly fast and steady. There is a lot of confusion, despair. There's a lot of unsettling that's going on in the world, and that's on purpose. And the purpose is to break down all the old paradigms and systems that no longer suit the new world that's coming. And new world meaning that if you really see the children that are being born, they are much more intuitive, much more aware, and they are really here to help shift this change that's occurring. So what they're saying is there's going to be a redistribution of power, and ultimately, if we focus on the external world of the systems in place that are being shifted and changed, some for the good, some for the bad, and things are not going to settle down yet. Things will continue to shift for the next couple of years. But the real message here, the true power is within you. And this whole period of time is to help us go within, to find our safe place, to find our truth, and to live a life of authenticity, and to live a life through our heart, not through our minds. And so the new technology that's coming is going to be taking the place of what our minds used to do in some ways, where we'd have to bring in all this not the wisdom, but the information. And so we were kind of downloading it into our systems, right? And kind of formulating, making that important for us. But empowerment now is about bringing in the power so we can be creative and innovative, and in our heart place of serving both our families, our lives, our communities in a way that is beyond the systems, right? And so one thing that they're offering everybody is to recognize that you have the ability to welcome in the change as opposed to be resistant to it. And when you accept what is happening and not try to fight it, you have more power in that. And what's happening now is a lot of people are so much in the outside world, so much, and they're pulling it all in and making it a part of them. So all the fear that's out there, all the, we can think of the political change that's just happening. There's huge conversations going on about that, and everybody has an opinion about that. As this is this example, they're asking us to stop all of that. Let them play that out. That's not our job. Our job is to go within, and our job is then to decide what is right for us, and then come together in a collective, like-minded group and start formulating sort of a different way of existing with our community and our lives. And ultimately, they're saying that if we navigate this through correctly, the power within the individual will start to rise, and the voices of them will start to rise, and the systems around them will start to have to bow down to us in a way that's not happening now.
That's an incredible message of hope, I think.
It is hope. And they're reminding us that if we live in the fear, we lose our power. But if we step outside of the fear and navigate our own lives, what we will find is there is joy in our lives. There is love in our lives. There is incredible existence on this earth. There are incredible ways to live a beautiful life. And yet all of us are kind of shutting that down because we're playing outside too much. We need to start playing inside.
Playing. So the word playing comes up. From the guide's perspective, why is it so important to connect to the inner child? What is it about playing that helps us as adults so much?
The essence of who we truly are as souls is to be creative. And in play, you get lots of creativity and joy and excitement. And the way sort of, and not everybody will necessarily see this as a truth, but there are some laws of the universe. And one of the laws is that like attracts like. So when we are in a more joyful place, which means we can expand outward, and part of what we need with the individual is in that play will create new innovation, right? It creates a newer way of living. Without that play and expression, we don't get a chance to develop that creativity, to which builds out to innovation and new innovation. And play is very different for everybody. And in play, it also feeds the soul, right? And the energy itself starts to expand outwards and is shared by all. So it's such a beautiful gift. But if we also encapsulate play, we are then playing with the universe. We kind of are able to expand the possibilities. And we're so confined in our ways of living, and they're asking us to start to expand ourselves, right? To be more of ourselves than we ever have been by using the whole of ourselves. And that comes into play. You play with all of yourself, not just in your mind.
And I think that's very relevant because I've found tremendous healing with tapping more into my feminine side, realizing that each person has masculine and feminine qualities. These are like the polarities of reality. And so I ask the question, what is the importance of balancing the masculine and feminine, and how important is it to bring more of the feminine into our lives, given we've been in such a masculine place for so long?
Oh, the feminine is such a healing energy. It truly is healing. the compassion, the love, the support, the creativity, and the nurturing, all of that is from the heart. And the masculine is the mind. And we need both. But when the heart is guiding the mind, it's a very different journey than when the mind leads and the heart follows. And most of us don't follow by the heart at all, because that's where a lot of the pain is. But now I got to go back to the channel. So ask the question again, please.
What is the importance of balancing the masculine and feminine qualities, and why is it so good for us to bring more feminine into our lives?
So they're not going to use the word balance, because we have a conception of what balance is. So we don't want to talk about balance as much as give it an equal share. So there are times and places for both. And when you accept both and you learn to integrate it, there's a synergy that happens within us. And it helps us become even more powerful as individuals, because when we are using all of our capacities. But the feminine itself is what's needed now, because we need that compassion and love and support and nurturing to help us through this journey. We need to be a part of each other's lives in a way that we haven't experienced for a long time, and integrate back with trust. And so that's why the feminine is coming into more play here. And that's why you're seeing, and we're not going to say this has to do with women. It has nothing to do with women. It has to do with the energy that's carried by the feminine, if you will. Also, what do most people need? We need a sense of love. So Mother Mary's coming in. You can imagine, even if you're not religious, this is not a religious thing, but the concept of Mother Mary, when she comes in right now, she's giving us all a huge hug. And if you feel that hug, it is unconditional love. So the feminine is welcoming us all to experience that through the feminine, not the masculine. So the invite is to open our hearts more to that experience of truly loving unconditionally both of ourselves, the people that are in our lives, and outreaching that into our community. Because without that love, we will fall to the other that's we're experiencing a lot more of, which is fear and pain.
Wow. That's incredible. I can definitely attest to that, because I think the more that I've got into being and less doing, the happier I've become. And this has been a big lesson for me. If as I've been creating this business, I've really been like, go, 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 let's produce, let's create. But it's been really important for me to rest and just love myself and give myself times of that feminine, just self-nurturing, as opposed to just the go, go, go. And that's made all the creations that I'd made better. So I know for a fact, at least in my own personal life, that tapping into more of my feminine qualities has helped me immensely, even as a man who really values my masculine qualities. So, but yeah, I guess want to open up the floor. Is there anything else that they'd like to say, or anything else that would like to come through?
They're saying that we are all loves. And whether you believe in guides or angels or any of that, even if you reach beyond yourself in terms of, I would say, higher self, most people would recognize that language. They're asking us to kind of go beyond our experience and rise up above that and feel what that feels like and feel the love, and they will help guide us.
Love is the medicine.
Love is the medicine.
Yeah, love is the medicine.
You know,
okay, so I really just want to thank you so much for being here and for doing this. And I'm so grateful for you for stepping up and allowing yourself to be seen and sharing your voice. And, I think a lot of people do really need to hear the wisdom that you have. And maybe need isn't the proper word, but I think a lot of people would really enjoy to hear some of your wisdom and hear your story. So I just really want to take a second and honor you for doing this and say, I love you so much. Thank you for being here. And is there anything else that you'd like to talk about? How was this experience for you?
Well, I was just going to say, I'm going to acknowledge myself. So thank you for those. I mean, honestly, it's from you could It's so heartfelt. But I also want to acknowledge myself publicly. And I'm very proud of myself. And to give everybody a little bit of hope, I haven't shared a lot of my story, but I've had some incredibly difficult experiences to the point where I wanted to let go of my life. So it's gone that deep. But one thing I know about myself is I will always get up, right? And you may not have to do a journey of 40 years like I've done. And I don't want that on anybody either. But what I want to say is, please take a moment for yourself and really be truthful with yourself. What I ask of most people is just be honest with yourself. And when you're honest with yourself, you have the ability now to be able to do for yourself in a way that you've never done. So I welcome everybody to take a little time for themselves and do a little self-reflection in a kind, compassionate way, to come to understand yourself and recognize a lot of the stuff that's really going on in your life isn't your fault. And a lot of the things can be changed. I know we don't like change, but when you actually accept that change is happening and you welcome it, then you have the ability to transform and even transcend beyond what you've gone through. So it's such an empowering thing. And I want people to know they have it within them to do this journey and to come out the other side. And on the other side is all of who you really are, right? The essence of who you really comes out, and you have a chance to really have such a beautiful life. But you got to take the first steps.
Wow. Amazing ending. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everyone for watching. We're going to try and release a video every Thursday so you can look forward to more content from me and my mom and hopefully some incredible other guests as well. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Believe in yourself and have a wonderful day.